All right, Shalom. Let me get straight into this lesson. All right, I'm gonna be doing a commentary on this video of this so-called white-looking woman, right? So-called, and that's why when we go into the ethnicities that you know of, we have to say so-called white and so-called black because that's what people are familiar with. But don't those don't exist in reality. In the truth of the Bible, there was no people known as white people, and there was no people known as black people. This is a social construct that was created by the so-called white man to control the narrative and to put himself up over you by labeling him as white. And their flesh is not the color white. These are crayon colors, and the whole world is bound to this because the gross darkness covering the whole earth. The gross darkness, Salakia, that covers the entire earth. And that gross darkness goes back into ignorance. People don't know their true ethnicity because they're taught as a child, check the box, white and black, Native American, all that folly. So I guess she trying to come to some kind of grips of what's going on. I'm going to be correcting her, but you know, at least she somewhat thinking about this because this is a mindless population that thinks about constantly folly and they don't really think about what's going on really in the real world. So let's get into this video. Matter of fact, I want to do this first because they declared white people in 1681. This is when this term was put into law. I think it was 1681, 1691, Salakia. And everybody has been conditioned to go by these ethnicities, these pseudo ethnicities. Let's go ahead. I'm going to jump right back. It says the invention of the white race. It says when the so-called first Africans, and this word Africans is a new word too. The word Africa or Africans in the plural sense is a Latin word. They renamed the continent Africa, so-called white people, and that's what has stuck to this very day. It says the invention of so-called white people. It says when the first, supposed to be Israelites, arrived in Virginia in 1619, there were no white people there. None. So let's go here. So the invention of it, when you invent something, you create it. Just that pseudoscience that people, out of their ignorance and they don't know, they hold on to these things. Let's go here. Codification and law, but it was in 1681. But let's go with this right here. The codification and law. It says a 1691 Virginia law officially banned interracial marriage, marking one of the earliest legal uses of white to differentiate and grant status to Edomites, right? But they've got this word European there because the control the narrative. They create words out of thin air and then they add definitions to these words and then put it into the dictionary in literature as it always been there. That's that great witchcraft. It says the word white became a legal and social classification determining a person's rights and liberties. But this was a creation. Let's go back up here. It says the ideal of white people is a social and political invention, not a biological reality, because the so-called white man, they'll say they Christians, but they don't go by the Christian ethnicities. You see how crazy this is? Makes no logical sense. So let's get into this video in 1 second. And people might say, why is this the biggest deal, that we bringing this up? Because it's a very big deal. Because if you don't know where you come from, you can't know where you're going. Where you don't know what your ethnicity is, that's the determining factor of who you is, where you come from, your culture. See, you've been given this American culture, which is deaf. It's based into lies. It's based into confusion. So let me get into this. I don't want to ramble too much.
With my 14-year-old about whiteness. And talking with him, I realized, White people don't talk about this nearly enough. Whiteness is stupid, really. What does it even mean?
What does it mean? It means, remember, matter of fact, let me go into this definition. I've done this before. I'm going to break it down into elementary forms. Give me 1 second. Let's go here. I'm going to jump right back because I want to make sure I go all into that video. So when you first go into the, you wake up, you understand what's going on to a certain degree. You have to shake this teaching that you've been taught in this society, right? So this book is the Dictionary of Religious Terms, 1967. The older the book is, the more truth that's in the book. So when you go into the original definition of black, and it gets more sinister than this. When you go to the word black, it means untrustworthy, ugly, nasty, dirty, evil, wicked, sinister, sin. So let's go here. Black. It says religious symbol of mourning. That's why when you go to funerals, people got black on. When you put black in front of anything, it automatically make everything else negative about it. Black sheep, right? Black magic. It says death, sin, sickness, and evil. Let's go to this definition. White. Religious symbol of light, joy, purity, innocence, and holiness. So when you go into the term black, it's associated with something negative. When you go to the term white, it's associated with something positive. Now you understand why he did this. Let's get back into this video. And get back into this video. And another observation I want to point out to you. Her flesh is not the color white. The headband that she has on is the color white. Let's get more into this.
Whiteness is stupid, really. What does it even mean? Whiteness, let's see. I'll give you an example. Let's go to Europe. So, in Europe, right, this is where the white people are, in Europe.
And you see the average American is poorly educated and dumb. Now, you have to go actually study this, but Europe is a new invention. They renamed that Europe. It's called Asia, but they renamed it Europe and then created a whole false ethnicity of people they call Europeans. But their true biblical ethnicity is Edomites. And why is this so important to understand this? Because the Edomites that's in the Bible, that's a true ethnicity, they control the world and they run the world in wickedness. And this is the end of the kingdom before the kingdom of the Israelites come in. This is the kingdom that you're in. That's why it's so wicked. That's why idolatry is normalized. That's why paganism is normalized. That's why it's Christmas celebrated. Halloween, that's a big one coming up, right? And these people, they pagans, trying to say they Christians. It makes no sense. The Bible is a historical, cultural book about Israelites. It's not a Christian book.
But if you're looking, like we have Ukraine, like they're white. They're very white. Russia, they're white. But let's keep moving east. Kazakhstan. Are they white? Or are they Asian? Or are they Middle Eastern? I don't know.
And you see that the people is in gross darkness. And she's trying the best she can, but she can't comprehend what's going on because she's been poorly educated on this system. This system has failed the people. That's why the people don't. She's identifying ethnicities of people with a crayon color. And they don't really think about what they're saying, because when you're indoctrinated, you don't think about what you're saying. You don't say, "Hold up, this don't even make sense." But she's thinking to a certain degree.
Oh. What about, I guess Romanians are definitely white. Turkey, no, they're not. Right, Turkish people, do we think they're white? What about Georgia? Are people from Georgia or Armenia? Armenia's right here. Are the Kardashians white? Do you see why this is stupid? Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and then you have Iran. Definitely not white. But Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, I I don't know, because are they white? I have a very good friend from childhood who's Ecuadorian, and we went to a Ecuadorian restaurant in Austin. I think we got there first, and the lady spoke to me in English. And then when my friend came in, they spoke to her in Spanish. And it was weird to me because she is whiter than I am. Like her skin, she has that really milky, gorgeous white skin.
And see, no one's the color white. And this with a confusion, even though you people can see that one skin is not visibly white, you still say that because that's what you know. And that's the ignorance that's on the people. Going back to Isaiah 16:2, gross darkness shall cover the earth. Gross ignorance of darkness shall cover the people. The people can see things not right, but they can't quite put it all together in a truth's sake. It's based into the education system and the terminology they know that they try to put the truth together, and it's just not going to work that way. That's why it's even more confusion on these people.
Again. And I was like, how did they know that she was Ecuadorian and spoke Spanish and that I was white and didn't? How? I don't know. And that's how stupid whiteness is. And the reason we have whiteness is because in America we had to distinguish it from blackness.
Bingo.
Because black people were
So
slaves. And then you have to.
So she kind of onto something, but she don't have the full understanding. But yes, the whiteness was created in 1681, put into law I think 1691. Prior to that, there was no humanity, ethnicity. Remember, the so-called white man got his census bureau when he created ethnicities out of thin air. So these really are not true ethnicities. They're these ethnicities that's pseudo. When I say pseudo, they false. Because he wants to be in control. He wants to put his program together. He put the Lord program to the side. And that's it was 18 original nations. What nation do you descend from? We descend from Hebrew Israelites. We're not black people. We're not Native American. We're not Hispanic. That's all new speak. Them are new created false ethnicities. But people don't know better because they've been taught a certain way. They've been taught under the system of lies and confusion.
To back up a little bit and realize that in order to live with themselves, to justify enslaving black people, white people had to tell themselves that black people deserved it, that they were less than white. White was supreme, black deserved enslavement. And so when you came to America, you came from some European country, and then when you got here, that didn't matter anymore because you were not black. You were.
Well, there you go. That's the creation of the so-called white man. And they running from their biblical ethnicity because they're a big major player in prophecy. Esau, the Edomites, as the end of the world, end of the age. And Jacob, the so-called blacks, Hispanic, and Native Americans, that's in their right mind among the elect. And all Israel eventually is going to be saved. Even the 2/3, they'll come back into the kingdom as babies, you know what I'm saying? But they're going to taste that bitter death on this side because of their rebellion, their ignorance. And this is the whole construct, the social construct. Remember, when you go into the definition social construct, it's not based on truth. It's based on something that was created. That's why you got all these different other social constructs that you have been taught that's not nothing dealing with the Bible. Is based in the so-called white man philosophies, his theories, what he think. And he has baked it into these institutions, these collegiate institutions as facts, when it's really pseudo false science, false history, lies, deception, wickedness, confusion. An average American is deeply confused. They don't think about what they say. They don't know what words properly mean. And thus you have a society that can be ruled over by these Edomites, the elites. All right, hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Allah Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rachak Kodash. Shalom.